July 18th, 2018. This is show number 1193 of Glenn Rose, but My Beautiful Life. I didn't turn your microphone on. Damn it.
Oops. My microphone isn't on, everyone.
I'll fix it in post.
Hi.
Will not. Oops. On tonight's show, we'll talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com about whether emojis are important or not. There was an interesting, I shouldn't lie to you, a very uninteresting article over at iMore about the importance of emojis. And we'll talk about that. We'll also talk about Apple's rulebook. Jason Snell wrote an interesting article over at Macworld about the importance, about the way Apple has changed in particular ways. We'll talk about that a little later on in the show. In our starting point photography segment, we're going to talk about DSLR versus mirrorless cameras. I had someone ask what kind of camera they should take to Lisbon. That they had a choice. They're going to buy a new camera for Christmas and then maybe come with us in Lisbon, and they were curious as to what I suggested camera-wise. And that was a good question. We'll talk about the differences, pros and cons of DSLRs and mirrorless cameras. Why are you making faces as I'm speaking?
Oh, I'm sorry. It's the beer. Sorry.
You forget you're on camera sometimes,
I really
don't you?
Do. I try and forget it.
I'm looking at the video here and I see my wife going...
It's really, really awful.
Funny. We have a local brewery here called Persephone. Very good brewery.
Mm-hmm.
But this particular pale ale is not a pale ale.
They put the wrong beer in the wrong can.
Yeah, that's definitely an IPA. And it's a typical of craft breweries, a very, very hoppy IPAs. That was the fault of our friend Susan. My friend Susan Thayer. I think Susan and Glenn are my longest friends, the people I've known the longest, that not relatives. And I've spoken about them for many, many times, how proud I am to be their friend, how proud I am of them to go. They're going on 28 years of marriage now. Wonderful people. And you got to meet both Susan and her daughter, Joanne.
Yes.
Joanna. Lovely, both of them, just beautiful people. I love both of them.
It was great.
So we made dinner for them. You slaved over a hot stove, made lasagna.
We made an amazing dinner. We both did.
We went all out. Saturday we made homemade lasagna.
From scratch, noodles and all.
With the Duomo, the dopo flour.
Yeah, that's right.
Used a Martha Stewart recipe, which came out pretty good.
For the noodles.
For the noodles, a bit futzy.
Yeah. A little bit. And it was so hot.
Yes.
So we had the fan going. And
I think your secret sauce is what made it.
The bechamel sauce.
You put a bechamel sauce.
You got to put a bechamel sauce in lasagna.
Now, what's a bechamel sauce?
A bechamel sauce is just a nice white sauce made with butter and flour and milk.
Is that all?
Yeah, just a plain bechamel sauce. That's how it's made.
Why the hell would they have such a fancy name?
I don't know.
Monty says, Susan, Greg, and Logan are great people. Wrong Susan, Monty. This is Susan, Glenn, Joanna, and LT. Canadian friends. Susan, you're talking about the Gares. Dave D says, Shawn, I saw your tweet about meeting Wyman and Melissa just over a year ago. That must have been just before we saw you in Vancouver. Yeah, I would have. So you would have been here in late June, Dave D. It was July 4th, 11:34 a.m. I first laid eyes on Melissa.
Oh my gosh!
Actually, 11:34 a.m. where I first saw her butt.
I was walking down the street.
She was facing the direction.
I was walking. Although I remember when you went to meet Dave and his lovely wife.
So it was after I met you.
It was after.
Oh, was it? Okay.
What does Dave say? I saw a tweet about meeting
July.
them
So it would have been a week later.
It was a week later, and you were meeting them. I remember that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Because I don't know, Dave was in Vancouver. Was it just traveling? I forget.
I think they were going on a cruise or coming back.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which is usually why the people are in Vancouver.
Because of the cruise ships, yeah. Oh, at the end of your train trip. Oh, lovely.
Train trip.
Oh.
So good for them. Something else is going on. Oh. How many of you have your old high school or university yearbooks. I have here in my hand.
Oh. I didn't know you were going to show that.
Melissa's college yearbook.
No, university.
University. Well, sorry, here, college, universities, same thing.
Not in Canada, it's not.
Why does it say Melissa Berryman and then weird letters? OT?
Because I'm an occupational. I graduated from.
Sorry. Okay.
Yeah.
This is what they say about her in her yearbook. Melissa will be remembered for her Aussie accent, gorgeous red hair, gushing compliments that kept her classmates going on those long days, and as one of the die-hard cyclists, rain or shine. She won't forget being broadsided in the head when a leg fell out of the freezer in anatomy class. Good thing it was in a bag. I'm sorry, what? You got smacked in a cadaver leg?
Oh, yeah. Well, because everybody would, it's hard to shove body parts back into freezers, especially when you're tired and they're really heavy. So sometimes you would go and open the fridge and, you'd go, and they'd fall out. So one day we were all in, no, what's it? They're in a bag. They're in formaldehyde.
I don't care if they're in a bag or not.
But they fall out and it was just a very funny moment when we were studying really hard in the anatomy lab.
Monty picked up on the same thing. It's hard to shove body parts back in a freezer.
It is.
We could go to jail for that.
Yeah.
That could be my ringtone.
With the dental students, they'd never put them back very properly.
Why the dental students doing?
Well, no,
cadavers?
the dental students would kind of have them from here, or maybe it wasn't the dental. It must have been the med students, the pre-med students that were doing that.
Dave D. Wow, don't take that out of context. Blowing her lung out and storm the wall.
Yeah. Well, up at UBC, they do the Storm the Wall every year.
I don't know what that is.
Oh, haven't you ever seen it? So it's intense. You have to do a run and a bike, and then you get to the end, and there's this huge wall that they erect, and you've got to run and try and get over it, and people are at the top, and yeah.
So a huge wall for you, like 5 feet tall?
It's actually very high.
5.5 feet tall? Crazy Tequila Night, blocking the heaving bosoms.
Oh, that was the longboat races. So the team was called the Heaving Bosoms. So we put our bras on. Oh, no, that was the other bras on over the top of our jackets or whatever. And then that was the name, Heaving Bosoms.
And frequently exclaiming, look, those people at the window have a life.
Yeah.
Her goals be like the people at the window and achieve a balanced lifestyle. Her last words are, phone me anytime. I'll be nice this time.
I know.
How could you not be nice?
Oh, sometimes my classmates would phone if we had questions, because we were studying constantly.
Yeah,
it was so
sure.
intense. And I'd go, hello! This is when we had a landline. There were no cell phones. And, what is it? I go, oh, sorry, Melissa. And I go, oh, it's okay. Well, what is it? Because we would have questions. And sometimes I could be mean on the phone because I was just wanted a life. I wanted to go outside.
How much will you pay me not to show this picture?
Oh, I don't care. You're going to show it out. I'm not paying you any money.
$5.
No.
Give me $5.
I'm not giving you 5. You already owe me 20. You took my 20.
Isn't that such a... Look at that cute picture.
Oh
This is my cute little wife. Look at her.
Are you there? Is that which one?
That's
am
you.
I?
That's you. That's you.
Oh, there I am.
Isn't that cute?
Oh, dear.
It hasn't changed a bit. No kidding. Same hair, same smile.
Oh, Dave, that's very
That's
sweet.
beautiful.
There's more wrinkles. You just can't.
Yeah, but the video hides them well.
It does.
Yesterday, we went on an epic journey. If you follow me on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, you would have seen some video of this epic. No, the Monty, the wrinkles are not my fault. She has children. They're not my fault. We went on an epic bike ride, almost 10 kilometers. For me, that's the end of the earth. We actually rented bicycles. Mm-hmm. Myself, Melissa, Rory, and his best friend, a nice
Great
kid named
Hayden.
Mm-hmm. And bicycled around the Stanley Park seawall. Now, before I moved to the States, I lived in Vancouver for about 15 years. And I didn't die. And not once had I ever gone around the seawall. Now, anyone who knows anything about Vancouver has a beautiful natural city park called Stanley Park.
It's the gem of the city.
It really is. If you ever see an overhead view of Vancouver, You have the North Shore Mountains, and then in the west, there's this big blob of trees. It's our version of Central Park. And there is a bike and walkway around the entire thing. You can drive around it, but there's also a bike and walkway. And I'd always driven around it. I'd never, ever walked
Well,
it.
when you drive, you don't go right on the ocean for the whole time.
And so because I've never walked around it, I've heard about these things in Vancouver, but never actually seen them. There's a thing called the Siwash Rock.
Well, I would say, Shawn, have you seen Siwash Rock?
Siwash Rock.
Can you see it from the road?
That's,
No, Shawn, you can't see Siwash Rock. No, I haven't seen it.
but I can't see it from the road. I can't see it.
Okay, have you seen the 9 o'clock gun? No. You seen it from... No.
There's the Girl in the Rock.
Yes. Famous statue.
Which is our version of the statue that they have in Daneland. Come on, correct me. Denmark. Or is it Amsterdam? I think it's Amsterdam.
I don't know what she actually represents.
And so, yeah, we went. There's a little bike place right there in the corner. It was dirt cheap. It was $8 an hour for a bike. And we went off. We had lots of water. And Melissa assured me that it was completely flat, knowing full well that if it even a little hill, I would bitch and moan till the cows came home.
Why stay away from him? I could
I
bike
noticed
ahead.
that.
I was like, see you later, bye. Although I could hear him if there were bumps or
because the bike had no
different
suspension.
contours. He was like, ow, 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 ow. He would be doing that. So.
My ass is not used to having something jammed up into
No,
it.
his ass is sore.
If only now, but I think now I understand why they wear those tight bike pants.
Well, and they have padding in them.
Yeah, because, and this is not a joke, with regular shorts on, the friction of MacMan Cinnamon, exactly. I was actually expecting it from Monty, to be honest. The friction of just your regular shorts rubbing back and forth on your thighs, on your butt, that's what causes a little bit. Monty, I was drinking. That
And having a cracker.
But that would honestly cause a little bit of abrasion. Wasn't bad. It was just a little minor uncomfortable. But I guess that's why the tight bike shorts they look good in some guys, but it would prevent that the cloth.
Yeah, the
nylon
padding helps a bit.
your
You
clothes
can
bunching up on you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We started off trying to do a tandem bike. Disaster.
10 seconds after we sat on it, Shawn went, no, it's not going to work.
Well, I was actually afraid that the tandem bike would cause us an accident because I didn't realize the tandem bike, all 4 pedals go at the same time. You have to pedal at the same speed. You can't. The person in the back can't stop and coast. The person in the front can't stop and coast because the pedals keep going if both people are pedaling. And I thought that would be dangerous because I haven't been on a bike in at least 5 years. I've never been on a tandem bike. And you're a much stronger biker. You have much stronger legs than I do. And I was worried about A, me not being able to keep up with you, and B, that unstableness causing an accident.
Yeah, it didn't feel too great.
No, it didn't.
Yeah.
It didn't. So we went on our own bike, which meant I couldn't videotape that I wanted to. I couldn't film the way I wanted to film. But we got some nice shots, some beautiful, beautiful spots there that we stopped and took some pictures with. But it was so... And maybe this is the reason why. It was so leisurely. I could have done 2 or 3 laps of the park easily.
Yeah, well, we'll do that next time. And we'll go up to the little lake, to Lost Lake, and we'll do all that. Yeah,
it was
so beautiful.
If you're ever in the Vancouver area, right down there on Denman and Georgia Street, there are 3 or 4 bike rental places, and they're all cheap. They're all $8, $9, $10 for an hour. Rent a bike, and they'll give you directions on how to do the Stanley Park Seawall. It's one way. There's no other traffic. You're on a dedicated bike path. You worry less about pedestrians and not at all about cars because you're completely separated from cars. And it's a very, very, very easy bike ride. Like I could do it. So that's how easy.
You have
it
to
was.
get off in some spots and walk. You have to honor that system.
And depending on when you go, it can be very, very busy. So those bikers are going to want to get past you. So you have to be kind of aware to stay to your right-hand
Just
side.
say to your left.
Yeah.
We saw a mama otter and her 2 babies.
Saw
It was
bald eagles.
Bald eagles.
Got-
Herons. We think we saw herons.
Cormorants.
Cormorants.
So if you're ever in Vancouver, it's a really, really pretty thing to do. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. In our starting point photography segment, we're going to talk about DSLR versus mirrorless cameras. We're going to talk about what the difference of those are and why you might want one over the other. But up next, we're going to talk to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com about the importance of emojis and Apple's rule books and the changes they are making. All that and much more coming up. This is Your Mac Life. Welcome back, folks. This is Your Mac Life. I am Shawn King, joined as always this Wednesday evening by our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. Jim, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Jim, you there?
Yeah.
It's awfully quiet. You're not in a bar. Why not? Are you okay? Do you need help?
No, I'm good.
Do you just
I'm not in the bar tonight.
Do we need to send help?
Nope.
Do you have a beer in hand?
I do.
All right. Okay. Good. As long as you got beer on you, then I feel much better about you not being in a bar.
I always have beer on me.
Somewhere in the beard or on your shorts or.
Yeah, it's somewhere.
It's somewhere. So Apple did this announcement. There's on Monday it was World Emoji Day. Do you use emojis? Do you care about emojis?
I use them once in a while.
Do you?
I do. Yeah.
Is it just to be cute, or are you sending messages to the kids?
Oh no, I don't talk in emojis.
Okay.
But I may say something and then, put a happy face at the end, or I may, somebody says something to me and I'll send them a skull and crossbones.
That's right. I've gotten a few of those.
Yeah.
So World Emoji Day, okay, that's fine, whatever. And then Apple comes up and they change their executive profile, the executives of the company, they changed their profiles to memojis, whatever. And it was kind of cute. I loved it. It was lovely. Little Tim Cook and Craig Federighi with his hair, and Johnny Ive with he doesn't even smile in his emojis, for Christ's sake. But then,
I know, right?
But then, your buddy Rene Ritchie over at iMore had to ruin it. Did you see this?
No.
He writes, Apple emojifies the leadership and why it matters. For some bizarre reason, Rene thinks, first of all, that memojis matter. Do you agree with that?
I think it's very cool. I think it shows a lot of what Apple can do. Yeah.
He is saying that we're about to go through the biggest transition in human interface history. Terrible writing. Command lines and GUI will have nothing on the AR and voice-driven future. We won't see interfaces. We'll be in them. And we won't just interface with them. They'll interface with us right back. So his logic is that Apple is preparing us for this AR and voice-driven future by using these memojis. That even if you personally don't use memojis, seeing memojis will, in this indeterminate future, make you better prepared for this AR and voice-driven future.
I think that they did it because it was cute.
Exactly. He says you can look at things like Animoji, Memoji as gimmicks. People will try once or twice, then move on from, and that's fine. But you'll be missing out on the bigger picture. That people, having tried them even once or twice, in doing so, have tried out face tracking and expression matching and creating an AR representation of themselves. That's one step closer to what comes next. Now, he doesn't say what comes next, but I don't think he could be any more wrong.
Well,
I don't think there's any way that you can assume that these things have any more importance to them than just what they are. Cartoon representations of people.
I just thought they were that was really funny. It was kind of a cute Apple thing to do, you know?
Yeah, and that's it. And that's all it needed to be. You don't need to see a bigger picture in Apple changing its executive profile pictures to memojis. This doesn't portend something in the future. I think he's reading way too much into this cutesy little thing that Apple did for PR reasons.
Maybe he's just smarter than we are.
I would doubt that.
You never know.
But that leads into another story by another guy that we both know, Jason Snell, formerly the executive director of Macworld, and now the writer of sixcolors.com, but he still writes for Macworld frequently. And he wrote a really interesting opinion piece called How Today's Apple Has Thrown Out Its Old Rulebook. And folks, if you get a chance to check that one out over at the Macworld website, please do. But one of the things that Jason points out, and it's something you and I have talked about, but Jason does it much better, is that Apple has really loosened up when it comes to making its executives more available to us in the media, but also making the media more able to connect with Apple. I think the Matthew Panzerini story with him in the him in the Apple Maps car was something that Steve Jobs would never have allowed.
Yeah, you're probably right.
That was it Natalie Karras who was the PR head during Jobs' era? I think that's who it was.
No, well, it was Katie Cotton.
Oh, I'm sorry, Katie Cotton.
And then Nat was working for Katie, as was Dowling.
That's right. Yeah, Natalie Karras and Steve Dowling were up for Katie's job, and Dowling got the job. I don't think it's a stretch to say that this is an extension of both Tim Cook and Steve Dowling. I don't know how well you know Steve. I assume you know him as well as I do. He's a nice guy. I've dealt with him on many occasions. He's been very, very pissed off at me on many occasions. But he seems to be a nice, open, fair guy who I always enjoyed dealing with.
Well,
no.
If we're no, I really like Steve a lot. But if we're being honest, everybody's been pissed off with you. So you could just leave that part of the conversation out completely.
Okay, wait a second. Did Natalie Karras never get mad at you? Did Katie Cotton never get mad at you?
Well, yeah, occasionally, but not like you. I mean, I'm just saying everybody gets mad at you. So.
Well, that's because I'm blatantly stupid. You're just occasionally stupid.
Right.
I'm Shakespearean trained stupid.
And, I hide my stupidity well.
Exactly. That's right. And that's the key. I haven't learned that aspect of it. But I think that's one of the reasons why I think it's a combination of both Steve Dowling and Tim Cook. their personalities are just more open than Steve Jobs certainly at the time. Understandable, very, very tight secrecy. Do you agree with me on that?
Well, yes, sure. There was a very tight secrecy, but you have to remember too that when Steve came in to take over, I mean, you could just call the operator and they would tell you what's coming. So, you know,
that's true.
It's not like there was a lot of secrecy involved.
The pendulum definitely swung to perhaps being overly secretive, but it worked for them. It really helped build their mystique. I don't think they need that anymore, even though they'll still use it to their advantage. I think the other aspect of it that Jason really points out and it was really interesting was that Apple could have announced these new MacBooks at WWDC. They announced them in this very informal kind of way. They invited select journalists to come to New York City to get a demonstration of these new MacBooks. I think that's a different way of doing things, but not announcing.
Who was there anyway?
Renee was there. I think Matthew Panzerini was there also. Gruber was invited but couldn't make it, and there was at least two others that made it there for the actual hands-on with the Apple folks in New York City. Mm. But I think that's interesting too, because that never happened during Steve Jobs' reign at Apple. Individual journalists were never allowed to come and sit in on these kinds of things. But I found it interesting that this was a machine that Apple knew was coming out, could have announced at WWDC. It was only last month, but Apple chose not to. Why do you think that was?
Well, I think that there was enough at WWDC with software. That's what they wanted to focus on. They didn't want to make it a hardware event.
You don't think that so you're thinking that the hardware would have distracted from WWDC?
Hardware always does.
Yeah.
It always does.
I think it's maybe that, but I think it's also because Apple nowadays, again, under Steve Dowling, understands the value of momentum, of the wave of PR. So the WWDC PR is just sort of waning. iOS 12 beta is out. Mojave beta is out. And the PR is just going down a little bit. And then Apple ramps it up again with new announcements of new, incredibly powerful MacBook Pros. I think that's the way. I think we're going to see in another month announcements of new iMacs, maybe new MacBooks, maybe new, you know what I'm saying? I think they're going to keep doing this. I think every 6 weeks now until Thanksgiving, we're going to see new Apple products.
We may.
I think that's what the new Apple is about. They don't have to do these splashy announcements where they have everyone join them in Cupertino or everyone join them at the Steve Jobs Theater. They can now do these things in this kind of way and get almost as much, if not more effective PR than they would have if they announced it on the stage at WWDC.
Yeah. Well, they haven't had to do that for a while, though.
True. How has your relationship with Apple PR changed over the last 5 years since Dowling has taken over? Do you find yourself with more access, less, the same?
Everything is about the same for
you think?
me.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I don't see... they're certainly more open than what they were. I mean, open publicly than what they used to be, but... You know, that's about it.
But you don't feel you're getting more or less access with Dowling than you were before under Katie?
No.
Okay, interesting. Because I've asked some other people about that, and they said that at the very least they feel that Apple PR is friendlier. I definitely feel that Apple PR is definitely more open, as you said, to answering questions. Before, for those folks who don't know, Apple PR has a hotline for journalists, and the old joke was that hotline was literally a black hole. You could ask a question in there, and you were never going to get an answer. But now I find once a week, if I need to call to get clarification on something or curious about something, I actually do get a call back from somebody at Apple, which is a big deal for someone who needs information and someone who's a journalist and needs to find this stuff out.
Yep.
Now, that being said, and leading into the new MacBooks, one of the things that Dave Mark posted on loopinsight.com was that Apple, he posted a story about the iFixit folks have discovered that there's a new silicon film gel over the keyboard. Now, as Gruber said, Apple's not going to admit this is because of the issues with the keyboard, but both Dave and iFixit believe it is a solution to the keyboard problems. Do you think Apple has done this, or is this just, as some folks are saying, the next iteration of keyboards?
Well, it could be both, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure that they were working on the next generation of keyboards, like they did with the first one, and maybe this was something they were going to put in anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to think that, I mean, this whole keyboard thing just got sort of resolved in the last few weeks.
Yes.
They would have had to have been planning out a lot longer than that in order to implement this.
Sure, you can't just throw in this thing and expect it to work the next day.
Yeah, so they would have had that.
So you don't think that this was in direct reaction to the lawsuits and the other things that Apple has been going on, but it is a happy accident.
Well, I'm sure when people started complaining, and you got to remember too that a lot of this stuff, it's not everybody that is having a problem.
Sure, absolutely.
And when Apple says that they're a small number, I believe that there's a small number in comparison to what they've sold.
Yeah, but Apple didn't say what that number was. A small number out of millions is a large number.
Well, yeah, okay. But still a small number from what they said.
All right.
I never had the problem. I know other people that never had the problem.
Yep.
I do know people that did have the problem.
Sure.
And it would be annoying if you did.
Yep.
But I'm sure that when they started hearing this, that they started working on a solution. But that would have been, a while ago. It wasn't 3 weeks ago.
Yes. Yeah. And Gruber makes a really good point that there are perfectly good reasons why Apple would not say that, yes, this is in the previous keyboard wasn't working out properly. This is a new version of it. And it's because the legality of saying that. And you can't blame Apple for that, because if Apple does say that, every 2-bit lawyer and his legal secretary will jump up their butts looking to sue them for new machines. Apple, I think, is doing the right thing. They are extending the warranty on the machines that are in question. You can take your machine into Apple and get a fix now. We don't know if it's going to be a fix of this new keyboard. And the new keyboard they have is also going to be in these new machines that are probably going to solve most of the problem. We don't know for a fact it'll solve everyone's, but...
Only in Canada could I hear a chainsaw in the background.
I know. Jesus, dude. Hang on a second. Goddamn neighbors.
You know it's summer.
No kidding. Trying to get Melissa in here to close these windows so we don't got to listen to that guy next door jamming away on the keyboard. Melissa! Jesus. You close these windows. Sorry about that. You posted up on the Loop, Dave posted up on the Loop, Samsung's latest snarky swipe at Apple. Did you see this ad and think it was just really bizarre?
You know what? I at any time a company focuses on other people's products but their own is a mistake.
Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah, I mean, everything that they seem to do is just weird.
And then to focus on that one aspect of things, I think it says that they assume that their customers don't know this is not true. Download speeds have very little to do with the actual phone you have and much more to do with the network that you're on, right?
Well, don't tell them that.
And it also doesn't accept the fact that download speeds for most of us are okay. It's upload speeds that many of us have to worry about. Getting data up to the cloud is always slower than getting data down onto your phone. It made no sense as an ad, data-wise, information-wise, but it, like you said, it also makes no sense. They just keep poking at Apple. Tell me what your phone does, not what Apple's doesn't do.
Yeah.
I'd be perfectly happy to watch a good ad by a company that says, hey, the Android phone can do this, this, and this, and I can go, wow, that's kind of cool that it can do this, this, and this. But you're not getting that from Samsung.
No, and that just seems weird to me all around.
Yep.
I mean, if I was looking for a new guitar and Gibson kept talking about Fender, then I'd take a look at Fender, and say, why do they keep mentioning Fender? They must be a good brand. They must have a good guitar. Maybe I'll go buy one of those.
Yeah, it was just a really weird thing for them to focus on.
And that's what they keep doing over and over
Yep.
again. And, I don't think that it's going to stop. I think they're going to keep going because they seem very infatuated with everything that Apple does.
It seems like the executive leadership at Samsung think that this makes them on the same level as Apple. They can compete at the same level with Apple, which is odd because you'd assume they have the same data that most others have, that Samsung isn't competing with Apple. They're competing with other Android manufacturers because the number of people who switch from an iPhone to a Samsung device is minuscule compared to how many folks switch between Android devices and Android to iPhone. You'd think they'd focus more on what their devices can do versus their own direct competition than it would be this whole different operating system and different company.
What's interesting to me is that I've used Android devices and I just find them very slow.
Really?
It must be the OS or something, but whenever somebody has one there, I'll make fun of them first and then, poke around on it. And it just seems it's not very responsive. There's nothing about it that I like. I'll press something and then you have to wait for something to happen. And I just get frustrated and give it back. So maybe that's Android. I don't know, but the phones themselves don't seem that great to me.
I think it's funny that Monty in the IRC chat room says, I've not seen this commercial yet. So I cut and pasted the Loop article that's got the commercial in it. And the next thing I see is Monty saying, okay, that was just dumb.
Yeah.
That's exactly your reaction to it. It's just dumb.
It is. It has to be your reaction to it. And, I mean, when Samsung set out to take this swipe at Apple, they wanted press. Well, they got press.
Yes.
Because they took a swipe at Apple and they got press for it. But I don't think ultimately it's the type of press that they wanted.
Yeah.
At first, they get the press that they wanted, Samsung takes a swipe at Apple. But then when you look at the ad, you say, that seems weird.
Yeah, exactly. And the more knowledgeable you are about this stuff, the weirder the ad becomes. I showed it to my wife, and who's not a techie at all, and she thought, why are they slamming Apple for that kind of stuff? And she doesn't know anything about internet speeds or that kind of stuff. She said, aren't all phones the same when it comes to download speeds? And yep, they are. Yep. It makes no sense at all to slam them.
Well, but here you are.
You mentioned on last week's show about the the delete button on the Apple Store update tab, and you wrote a story about it on the Loop that I thought was hilarious. That after we talked about it, you were like, yeah, I want to write about this.
Yeah.
It is a really odd thing that after all this time, after all these versions of iTunes and iOS, we're up to 12 now, and the App Store is 10 years old, that Apple still hasn't given us this thing that seems blindingly obvious that someone at Apple, at some point in the last 5 years, would have said, hey, why don't we code this? Have you heard from anyone as to an explanation as to why Apple doesn't?
Well, that Apple has or had a version of this with a delete button in it. But somebody on the forums actually brought up a very good point in that Apple probably doesn't want people to accidentally delete apps and data. from their phones, from the App Store, because they're used to just updating. But I think that there's other ways that they can implement a delete, like a swipe or, something that will like a mail message. If you swipe, it'll reveal other things that you can do with a mail message. Well, I think that they could do that same thing for apps. So you can just update all, or you can look through and say, or even an edit button and tap on the apps you want to delete and say, delete those, like you do with texts. I just think that there's a way that this could be implemented and save a lot of like I said in the story, I would love to say I'm going to clean up my iPhone, but I'm not. I just clicked update all, because that is really, it's the most natural thing to do. Update all. You see all these updates and you have, 2, you have 20, update all. Because under the current system, what is your other option? There is no other option. If you don't update all, what you can update individually, but you're always going to be left with that 1 or 2 or 5 apps. And there's no way to get rid of them unless you try and go find them.
Dave D says, why not just remove apps you don't use from your phone? I do that all the time. The problem Great idea. The problem is finding those damn little things, especially if you are like me and like Jim, if you've got apps that are hidden inside of folders. I've got folders completely full of photography apps and apps I haven't used, I've forgotten about because they're 4 levels deep in some folder. They're just a pain. I've forgotten where the damn app is. If I'm looking at the update, what Jim is saying is you're looking at the update button in the App Store, just be able to swipe, or as MacMan says, have me authenticate before I delete. I got to authenticate before I download. I have to authenticate before I buy something. So why not just have me authenticate before I delete?
Any number of things could work. But that's the whole point, though, is that if you look at should I go through my iPhone screens and delete apps that I don't want? Absolutely, I should. Yeah, and everybody should. And Dave obviously does, but I haven't. So I'm just saying that it's a very easy way when updates come out, you can say, oh I don't use that anymore, or whatever, I want to delete this instead of updating it. And then you can press update all. And after, a few cycles, then you only have the apps that you want there.
Dave D, settings, general, offload unused apps. Now, the issue with that is maybe it's an app you only use once every 6 months, once every 4 months, whatever. I want a way to, right from that update screen, because the update reminds me, or have the ability in the update screen that says, you haven't used this app in a year, do you want us to get rid of it, kind of thing. Don't update it, dummy. You're never going to use it. Just, I have no problem with what Dave is saying. Settings, general, offload unused apps. But there should be more than one way to skin this particular cat. It doesn't seem like to be that big of a deal to, while I'm looking at the update screen, while I'm updating YouTube and Twitter and the apps I do all the time, there's one app that I like, you know what, I don't play that game anymore. Delete. Right then and there. Don't make me then go and find it and do it that way. Or, as Dave says, settings, general, offload unused apps. There are apps that I want to keep on my phone that I haven't used in a long time because I want to use them as a demonstration for somebody. I don't actually use the app, but I want to show it off to other people. And so it's an unused app in the sense that it might not get used for 3 or 4 months, but I do still want to keep it. There are different ways of doing it. I think the most efficient way is right there or one of the most efficient ways is, as you said, right there in the update screen, just swipe. Dave D says, geez, Luddites.
Well, yeah, Dave is right. I mean,
no, not Luddites, just lazy.
Well,
and I'm okay with that.
Whatever it is.
Whatever it is, exactly. I'm okay regardless. I think it's lazy, and I'm okay with being a little bit lazy in this regard. Folks, been talking to Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com. As always, he has his own podcast called The Dalrymple Report. You can find on the iTunes store. Thanks very much, Jim.
Thanks, Shawn.
Talk to you next week, buddy. See ya.
Bye.
I love that Dave D is like, come on, guys. Work with me on this one. But Dave D, you are right, but so are we. It'd just be nice to be able to have different ways of, as we said, skinning the same cat. When we come back, we're going to talk in our starting point photography segment about DSLR versus mirrorless cameras. All that and much more coming up. This is Your Mac Life.
Hello, my name is Melissa King. I'm Your Mac Life's official spokes Australian. As Shawn begins his 25th year of broadcasting on the internet, he has asked me to say a few words to you all. Send money. What? Why not? More? Okay. When you listen to Your Mac Life, you'll notice there are no ads, no commercial breaks, no 5-minute ad reads for products you've already bought or have no interest in buying. That's because Your Mac Life is entirely listener supported, and not even listener supported via a paywall or a subscription service. It's simple. If you like Your Mac Life, you can pay for it. If you don't want to pay for it, you don't have to. You can still listen. But we'd really like it if you did. On the Your Mac Life homepage at yourmaclifeshow.com, on the top left, there is a subscribe to YML box. You can send any amount you'd like each month automatically from your credit card or PayPal account. It's set for $2, $5, $10 or $15, but you can set it for any amount by clicking the donate button. The best part is you'll barely notice it. It's $2, but it makes a huge difference to us here at Your Mac Life. It means we can pay for website hosting, internet access, new computers and software to run the show on, and so much more. So, if you like Your Mac Life, please subscribe. $2 will make a tiny dent in your wallet, but when enough people subscribe, it makes a huge difference to Your Mac Life. I'm Melissa King. Thank you.
Sorry about that, folks. I opened the window up again, and as soon as I closed the windows, Curtis, our next door neighbor, stopped with the chainsaw. I opened the windows after the interview with Jim Dalrymple. He started chainsawing again. Fuck you, Curtis. Jesus. It's 7 o'clock at night, dude. Let it go.
I know.
Stop
he's
it.
Obsessed.
It's constant.
Obsessed. He's admitted he's obsessed.
Just so annoying. Macman says, is it wrong I'm trying to plan my trip to get a passport stamp in every country I visit? No, dude.
No.
You should have seen the look on Jay Curtis's face when we went to Paris and they didn't stamp his passport. He was so upset because not every country does it anymore.
Well, no, when we went into Australia,
Didn't get a
they
stamp?
didn't. No,
Didn't get a
no.
stamp.
And I love my old passport because I get to look. The one from India is a big paper thing
Is it?
stuck
Yeah.
in there. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
like stapled into it?
Yeah.
Or glued into it? Yeah.
Stapled.
Is it stapled?
Stapled.
I didn't know you could keep your old passports.
Oh, yeah, I've got all my old passports.
I sent all mine back.
Why?
Because I guess I didn't read the fine print, but it said that to send your old passport back. And then the fine print says, but if you want to, you can ask us to send it back to you, and they'll put a hole through it or do something to it.
Yeah, they put holes through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I lost mine with all my world travel when they used to put stamps into every single one. I lost my Japanese ones and my Egypt ones.
And you can keep track of your travels.
Monty says you have to send it back to get it canceled. Monty, we're not in Canada. In Canada, you can actually go to the passport office, and the passport office will mutilate it right there in their official.
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Official mutilation one.
With their mutilation holes.
I think Glenn T is Glenn Thayer.
Yeah.
Right? So he's saying.
That's what I'm thinking.
Okay. Right.
Yeah.
Just checking. So, what you laughing at?
Dave says Curtis is an artist.
Inspiration
knows no
bounds.
hours. It's based on his shift work at the mill.
So in our starting point photography segment tonight, I got an email from someone who was asking about what kind of camera are we going to be doing the workshop in Lisbon for. And one thing I don't think I've made clear is that the sessions are going to be focused mostly on photography itself, not the cameras, in that you can bring an iPhone. If you want to come to Lisbon and take iPhone shots, I guarantee you'll get great iPhone shots. But if you bring a DSLR or a mirrorless or even a point and shoot, a little tiny square little, I had one here a second ago. Where'd it go? See it over there?
I thought I did, yes.
Mm-hmm. If you want to take this camera to Lisbon, you'll get good pictures. But in general, what most people are going to be doing who are wanting to get more serious about photography, they're going to have a DSLR, digital single lens reflex camera. And basically that's the kind of camera that has the lens that comes off. And you screw another one on it. You can get little lenses, you can get big lenses. That's a DSLR. So, and Monty says the kind that takes pictures. Exactly. You'll be able to you'll learn to take better pictures no matter what camera you bring to Lisbon. But most people, I'm assuming, are going to bring some version of a DSLR. Now, there are two kinds of DSLRs. First of all, there's professional DSLRs and there's consumer level DSLRs. We're pretty much going to be talking about consumer level DSLRs. There are two kinds of DSLRs. There's mirrorless DSLRs and there's what we call DSLRs, or ones that do have a mirror. We've ended up calling them DSLRs and mirrorless, even though they're all DSLRs. I know that's a little confusing. So here is the traditional DSLR. This is my beloved Nikon D600. The traditional DSLR has a great big huge body on it. You'll often see a large lens on it. They are physically large, physically heavy cameras. These are the top ends of photography gear. If we want to use a car analogy, this would be a Porsche 911. There are Ferraris out there, but this is a Porsche 911 from 4 or 5 years ago. But it's a Porsche 911. So this is a fancy camera. This is a mirrorless camera. And as you can see, it's physically smaller in all aspects. The width of it is smaller. The weight of it is significantly smaller. I think the Nikon is 3 pounds, where this might be 1.5 pounds. And you can see if I hold them up next to each other, the size. And the size difference is primarily because that's mirrorless. There is a mirror in here that moves light around. There isn't a mirror in here, and that's where the physical size difference is primarily. That the fact that the big camera, the one on top, has a mirror inside of it, the little one on the bottom doesn't. So there are pros and cons of those two ways of looking at a camera manufacturer. The biggest one that you're going to notice is physical size. Is the DSLR is generally going to be heavier with the same kind of lens on it as a mirrorless camera. And that may be a good or a bad thing. Personally, I prefer a DSLR because I've got fairly large hands and big feet. We all know what that means. Big gloves and big shoes. Don't laugh. Don't. So what that means is that because the camera is physically bigger, my hand fits it much more comfortably. The other aspect of it, and this is a personal thing, is I find that a big, heavy DSLR is more stable in my hand. I'm less likely to have this thing move around for minor jostling of my body or people or a boat or things like that. Obviously, it's not going to fix this kind of stuff, but I like the heftiness of this. But I will be the first one to tell you, at the end of a day, a long day of shooting, a long day of walking around someplace, I notice I've been carrying around a big, heavy camera. Mirrorless cameras, because they're literally so much smaller, are much easier to travel with. They're less obtrusive. When I point this at someone, they know a photographer's taking a picture of them. It's a big, huge thing, and it really kind of obvious. Whereas you can be a lot more subtle with a small mirrorless camera. That can be good in places where you want to be less conspicuous. Don't care about conspicuous. I'm 6'3" and 260 pounds. I'm already conspicuous. So I'm not all that worried about it. Now that's the biggest difference you can notice right away, is the physical size of it, the size and weight of it. And that may be a concern. You may not want to drag around a bunch of gear with you when you go on a vacation or on a travel. The other difference when it comes to being actually mirrorless is when you look through the lens of this camera, when you look through the viewfinder, so this thing in the back here, when you look through that section of the camera, you're seeing the light that's coming through the lens. The light comes into the lens, it bounces around, hits the mirror, and moves up into here, this area up here. There's a pentaprism, it's called, up here, and then you see it through this opening here. On a mirrorless camera, what you're seeing through this viewfinder there, on the DSLR it's called an optical viewfinder because you're seeing the optics of the light. This is an electronic viewfinder, or an EVF, you'll see in some places. The electronic viewfinder is showing you not what's coming through, not the light that's coming through the lens, but what the sensor sees. This is a little teeny tiny TV screen. This is simply the light coming through the lens. And because this is a TV screen, both the viewfinder and the screen in the back, these things tend to use a lot more battery than an optical viewfinder. I can charge the batteries up on this thing and go shooting for a whole weekend. I can take upwards of 500, 600, 700 shots, and my battery is still going. This one maxes out at about 300, 400, maybe 500 shots, depending on how much I use this rear screen, because the rear screen on both the DSLR and the mirrorless uses up the most amount of your battery. And because this is a electronic viewfinder and that's an electronic viewfinder, one or the other of these is always on. So you're always using battery on this. On the DSLRs, you're not using the battery very much at all to take images. So that might be a concern, because it means you definitely should have multiple batteries for your mirrorless camera. You don't necessarily, if you're going away for the weekend, if I'm going away for the weekend, I'm just going to go shooting in Vancouver, I won't bring my extra batteries for my DSLR. Obviously, if you're going on a trip for a week to Lisbon, you'll bring extra batteries for both. But I like this because it doesn't use the batteries up nearly as fast as this one does. When it comes to lenses, again, the lenses on a DSLR, whether it's a mirrorless camera or not, just slide off very easily. The lenses are not interchangeable. This is my Nikon D600 can't use my Olympus lenses. So mirrorless cameras can only use mirrorless cameras lenses, and Nikon cameras can only use Nikon lenses. They can't use Canon lenses. So that's another issue that you might want to look at. If you've got a friend that will loan you his Canon lenses, buy a Canon camera. If you've got a friend that's got a mirrorless camera, what's called a micro four thirds camera, you can borrow his lenses, even if he uses a Panasonic or a Fuji, an Olympus like this one. Those lenses between those manufacturers are in fact interchangeable. So that might be an issue too. Ask your friends. Ask your friends if you can borrow a lens from him that you might like. Then, because that's one of the issues people have is they're worried that they can't get. You go to the Panasonic website or the Olympus website, and you look at the number of lenses that Olympus has. Then you look at the Nikon website or the Canon website. You go, oh, they've got 10 times more lenses. Yeah, but you're not going to use the vast majority of those lenses. Most of the lenses on any of the manufacturer's website are very, very specific to specific jobs. They're 400 millimeter lenses, or they're 9 millimeter pancake lenses that you as the average person are not going to buy. Every manufacturer has the lens range that the average person is going to want. You can get an 85 millimeter for every camera manufacturer. You can get a 50 millimeter for every camera manufacturer. You can get a 7200 from every manufacturer. So for the beginning user, lens envy is not going to be an issue for you. So don't worry about lenses when you go to buy your camera. Price point, generally you're going to get about the same price point. These two cameras, brand new, are the same price. This was about $1,500. This is about $1,500 without a lens. So brand new, these cameras are going to be about the same price. You can get an under $500 DSLR. You can get an under $500 mirrorless camera. But like everything else, you get what you pay for. The more money you spend, generally the better quality you're going to get. The biggest, weirdest difference from DSLRs to mirrorless is the two main manufacturers for DSLRs are Canon and Nikon. Canon owns about 60% of the market. Nikon has 30%, and the rest is divided up between Pentax and other companies. But when it comes to mirrorless cameras, Fuji, Olympus, what's the third one? Sony. Fuji, Olympus, and Sony own the mirrorless market. They make cameras that are significantly better than any mirrorless camera that Nikon and Canon have been able to come out with, which is really an odd thing, because Canon and Nikon, in theory, know so much about camera manufacturing. You'd think they would have come out with a better mirrorless camera, but their mirrorless cameras actually suck a lot. One of the other issues that used to be more prevalent when it came to mirrorless versus DSLR was the focusing system on mirrorless cameras wasn't as fast as a DSLR. That changed for the most part in the last 2 years. The mirrorless guys have really caught up when it comes to the focusing system. Pros, professional action shooters, sport photographers, action and wildlife photographers generally still prefer the autofocus on DSLRs because it's still a titch faster than it is on a mirrorless camera, but it's not so much that the average consumer is really going to worry about it. Unless you are always shooting your kids playing soccer, or always shooting race cars or horses or animals running or jumping and flying, I wouldn't worry too much about autofocus, except in low light conditions. Again, if you shoot in low light conditions, autofocus on a mirrorless is not quite as fast, and you can tend to sometimes find your camera is hunting for focus. It won't lock into focus because it just can't make out the distinction in low light situations. I mean, I've never had much of a problem with my DSLR, but I have had problems with this Olympus M1. But it's a fairly easy solution. You either switch to manual mode, or you learn to focus on a different kind of focusing technique. So there's other reasons why that you would want to look at these things. As I said, price point is generally about the same. It's really not much of an issue when it comes to prices. You can find the price point no matter which way you want to go, whether you want to go high end, mid range, or low end. You're always going to be able to find the right prices. You're always going to be able to find the kinds of features you want. The folks at Low Pro make bags for every kind of camera. The folks at Manfrotto make tripods for every kind of camera. The tripod mount for a mirrorless camera is going to be the same as the one for a DSLR. One feature that more mirrorless cameras have than DSLRs do is they often have a flip-out screen that you can do different things and get different angles. There are no high-end professional DSLRs that have this kind of screen. A lot of consumer DSLRs are now having them, but the folks at mirrorless cameras have been having these for years. Plus, you can autofocus by tapping on the screen. We often see people holding the camera out in front of them to take a picture, but with these ones, you can also tap on the screen, and the camera will focus on that spot for you, which is which is kind of nice. For the most part, buy the camera that fits into your budget and into how you want to use the camera. If you want a small, inobtrusive camera that's fit, this is a fairly large lens on this camera, but you can buy, do I have one here? Is there a knocking sound you can hear?
Yes.
Where's it coming from?
I have no idea.
Is it outside?
No.
Oh, it's because my camera was on my keyboard. I just turned the volume off of the keyboard. So you can get smaller lenses. Shush. You can get smaller lenses on these cameras. So if you want to be even more unobtrusive, you can use the smaller lenses. But you can also get smaller lenses on the DSLR too. What I tell folks is, especially if you're a beginner, get the camera that physically fits you, that you feel comfortable with. Get one that fits into your price range, and find the camera that you're most comfortable with. Like I said, that the Olympus M1 is a great camera, but I find it too small for my hands, and I don't use it very often. I prefer my Nikon D600. Sorry, are you yawning?
No.
Am I boring you?
No. Dave asked if we're going to be shooting indoors in Lisbon.
And why is Dave asking that question?
Because of light.
No. It's because Dave D is our first official, him and his wife, Anna, are our first official attendees at the Starting Point Photography in Lisbon workshop. Yay!
Yeah. Oh, I thought we announced that already.
That was the pre-show.
Oh.
This is the actual recorded show.
Oh, yes.
So
that's why Dave's asking.
This is
because of light.
This one's for you, Dave.
Absolutely. And your lovely wife.
Yes, Dave took advantage of the early bird early bird pricing, $100 off. The early bird pricing. We are going to be doing the hotel. Hopefully, we're going to have the hotel locked down in the next couple of weeks. I've sent out a bunch of emails to various hotels, and we want to get some answers for them, because what we want to be able to do is we want to have a meeting room where we can meet in the mornings or a bar where we can meet and hang out in. If you want to check out a really cool place that Melissa really likes, it's the Convent de Salvador. Is it Convent de Salvador? Hotel, was it Convento? ConventoSalvador.pt. It's the got to find the translation for it. It's the hotel that Melissa really thinks should be the one that we're going to stay in, don't you?
Well, it doesn't have to be, but I like it for a variety of reasons.
You'd prefer that hotel, is what I'm saying.
Well, I've looked at other ones that you've found that I like as well.
This one's got a great location.
It's just in a great location.
If nothing else, the Hotel Convento de Salvador is what it's called. Looks lovely. I'm going to cover up my beautiful wife's face while I show the picture of the hotel. Looks like it's got a wonderful courtyard. It is a former convent, which kind of creeps me out, but
no,
it does. Honest to God,
it's beautiful.
I know, but to me, it's a little weird.
Oh, it's freaky.
It's a little weird. Did Melissa just facepalm? Yes, she did. But
you were virgin women
Oh,
going about their daily tasks
No.
and
Nothing
revering in the love of God scare you?
Nothing
that
to do with
energy?
virginity.
Well, what is
It's
it
the
then?
religiosity of it.
Oh,
I'm afraid of bursting into flames walking on the grounds. So that's the one of the places that we're looking at. That's the one I'm hoping we get this one because that's the one that Melissa likes. It's also got a great location. What are you laughing at now?
MacMan's asking how you're supposed to have kinky sex in a former convent. Well, that in and of itself is kinky.
Dude!
See, easy, says Dave. See, this is stuff. I love it. Glenn wants to know, did we convince Susan? Well, Susan, it sounded like there were lots of other decisions to make.
No, wait a second, Glenn. Susan said you're the one who needed the convincing, buddy. So
Glenn.
I'm just saying, step up. Right? Man up and just tell your wife that you would like permission to go.
Glenn's saying just dress up as a nun. I like Glenn.
You guys are weird.
I think it's too fun.
Weird. So yes, Dave, we will be, if you want to do some research on this, we will be doing an indoor shoot, and I don't know how dark it's going to be. We are going to be going to the Geronimus Monastery at least one time. There are several other cathedrals that we can go to, and we'll also be going to the São George Castle, which has got some indoor aspects to it. But we'll definitely be in the inside of the Geronimus Monastery. If you want a link to that, send me an email, and I'll send you the information. No, Dave, that's one of the things we're going to be teaching you is to not use the flash, because inside a space like that, the flash will be utterly useless. Flash only works within, say, 6 feet of something in front of you. So if you're standing in a monastery or a church, a cathedral, and the back wall is dark, using your flash won't do a damn thing. So there's no point to do it. What we will do, though, Dave, is we'll talk about how to increase the light sensitivity of your camera so that you can get those better images. Definitely something we will be talking about. Dave D and his wife are going to be joining us in Lisbon, Portugal, March 23rd to 30th. I think Dave said he and his wife are coming a day early too, which I think is a good idea. At least, I don't know about Dave. Dave's in Minnesota. We're here on the West Coast. For us, it's a whole day. We're going to leave on a Friday, but not get there till Saturday morning, which is a giant. But there's no way for us to fly and get there the same day. I don't know if that's true of you, Dave. Are you going to? Yeah, same with Dave. You have to leave a day early. So I think it's if you can leave a day early and get there a day before, just so you can relax on your own and sort of chill. You and I just remembered where you and I will be in Florence, so we'll get there the morning of. There's short little 2-hour trips from Florence to Lisbon. That's what you and I will be on. We'll catch the plane first thing on Saturday morning. So yeah, indoor shooting at the Geronimus Monastery. Someone said, Macman says I might replace my 50 millimeter 1.8 with a 3.5 1.8. That'd be interesting, Macman. What that means is that's the angle that he'll be able to capture. So if he's shooting in a monastery or shooting landscape, he'll be able to get much broader, much wider shots. And the 3.5 is a beautiful, beautiful
Lovely
lens. 50 millimeter is still a very, very good lens. I'll have all of the 50 on my Nikon D600 because I love the 50 millimeter lens too. It's good. And that 1.8 is the size of the aperture. And so the lower that number is, the more the aperture will open up. That will also help in low light conditions. You may not be able to see as far. It's not a zoom lens, but you'll be able to capture more width and allow more light to come in with that. Dave D, you also might want to take a look at buying or investing in a travel tripod. Not necessary, and some places don't allow you to bring tripods, but we're going to have at least one sunrise and at least one sunset shoot. And so a small travel tripod might be a good idea for you to bring, one that'll fit in your luggage that you can just bring out once or twice on those two trips.
Yeah, he said he has his walking stick one. I think David said that before.
I'm not so crazy about walking stick monopods. I understand. I've used them, and I might not be using them right. The problem I have with any monopod is when you when you put that down, it works great to keep your camera from moving vertically, but it doesn't do anything about moving your camera vertically or back and forth. And that's the problem I have with monopods, is that so your camera to move them down, fine, but it's very easy to get that camera to move back and forth. So I prefer a tripod, but monopods are quite often allowed in museums and in places where they don't want people tripping over. They generally don't allow you to use a tripod in a museum, that kind of thing, because the legs might trip other people. So that's why they don't let you bring tripods. So at least a monopod you can bring in to a.
I can see why
church.
it would help.
Yeah, it can help, but you should be really, really good at using a monopod so that you are very aware of that movement side to side or back and forth. It does prevent vertical movement, but it doesn't do anything for horizontal or side to side movement. There is sway, so that's definitely the issue I have. Macman's going to bring his flash, SB600 off-camera flash. It's what he's talking about is this kind of flash unit, so that you can light things up from either on top of the camera or off to the side or that kind of stuff. So, so just letting you know what they're talking about. we did something that I haven't done in probably 20 years. We bought milk in a glass bottle.
Oh.
This was a couple of weeks ago. Why did we get this?
Well, I mean, I'd love to do it all the time. We were down at the markets, and
that's
I was
right.
picking up milk, and I got it in the glass.
I know we're going to date ourselves, but how many of you got milk in glass bottles? How many of you actually had a milkman who actually showed
Me.
up to your? You did, so did we. Who had a, now you kids out there may not know this, but there used to be a guy who came around before dawn
It's the milkman.
with
He had a little. He could put 4 milk bottles in it, like a little wire basket.
a carton that he would come to your house. And you would have the order in it too. He would see what you wanted.
Yeah.
You wanted 1 cream and 2 milk or whatever it was.
And that was when the cream was on the top, and you had to shake your milk.
You are old. Wasn't it a wonderful way to get things? I don't know what is it just the romantic in me that I think that was.
Well, that used to wake me up every morning.
Yeah, I remember
I
waking
loved
up the
that.
sound of his truck coming up
truck.
and the clink 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 of the bottles.
And I
as
never
you
knew
walked.
what he looked like. I didn't know the milkman because he was always so early.
I think he looked like my father.
Oh my God!
No, I'm kidding.
My brother would always lift up because he liked the cream.
Yes.
He would eat the cream first.
Yeah, it had the little plastic or
No, it's just foil.
paper for us was a paper flip tab.
Oh, I
You had
forget.
one part you had to flip up and then you had to peel it out. But what a lovely, this was a lovely reminder of that when we were kids of getting milk that way. It's kind of cool. I don't know what we're going to do with it now. Probably put pennies.
You're the one that
pennies in
you
it.
can actually take it and get money back for it. Well, that's a good idea. Put it in the fridge for cold water. Yeah.
I could do that. Yeah, easy to drink it.
How many have a milkman as a parent? Well, early morning wake ups can be a time of pleasure for some.
All righty, moving on.
Oh yeah, you can get milk in a plastic bag here too.
Yeah. In Canada, we still have the milk in bags, which really confuses Americans.
Cinnamon. Everyone's saying cinnamon. Oh, for heaven's sakes. Kinky sex in a convent is okay, but that's cinnamon.
They're kind of weird that way,
guys.
aren't they?
Yay to morning sex. I agree, Glenn.
Jeez.
I agree.
Oh, dear. Our friend Lauren Finkelstein sends his email, says regarding Melissa's passwords. I have to say, as someone who works in IT, having her passwords written in a book is not horrible.
Thank you, Lauren.
As long as her passwords are good ones and the book is secure.
Yes.
It's actually much better than most people who either have one password for everything or a formula that once learned, others can figure out your password for each site. It's not convenient, but it's not horribly insecure, he says. By the way, the funny thing about passwords, it turns out a simple multi-word password is much more secure than 8 random characters. You're better off with "this sentence is my password" than a bunch of random letters. He gives us reference for a USA Today article. Yeah, your password book certainly is secure. It's here at home in Gibson.
Yeah, I never take it anywhere.
No one's going to steal it.
No.
Even if someone broke into the house, they're not stealing your little password book. They wouldn't know.
No.
The downside is that your passwords tend to be fairly simple because you need to remember them. You don't always have, if you're out and about and you need access to your banking, you don't carry your book around with you.
No.
So if you have to go to your bank on your computer, you don't remember your password or Apple ID or those kinds of things. So that's the downside of having it in a little book.
I don't need my password if I access my banking away from home.
But I'm saying for some things,
Oh.
you might need it. But you tend to you use words for your password.
And numbers and exclamation points.
You've only just started doing that since.
No, I have always used numbers and different symbols for my passwords.
Only since you met me.
No, I haven't. I know you like to think that, but anyhow, moving on.
So that is certainly, as Lauren said, that's better than just using simple passwords or using the same password every single time on every single website.
Yeah.
So you've taken a step towards being a little more secure. You're not, and you're probably I'd say 85% secure, if only because of where we live. You trust everyone who's in the house. You know, you trust everyone who has access to your little book. So you don't have to worry about the people who are allowed in the house getting access to the book.
No. No.
We've just started using 1Password, but only for, I think mostly for curiosity's sake for you, but also because you tend to forget passwords.
Because I have my little book. That's why I have a little book.
Yes, but what I'm saying is you, with 1Password, don't even need the little book.
No, I realize that, and that's lovely. And that's why I've gone ahead and we'll try it.
So what I did was I sent an email out to the folks at 1Password asking them if you can do an interview with them.
Yeah.
I think it could be kind of fun, have Melissa asking beginner questions about 1Password.
Yeah, I think
what it is, what it does, and the things that you are curious about when it comes to 1Password.
Yeah, I want more people to know about 1Password.
It's very convenient. It's very cool. I like the way it works. It's changed its business model a little bit, but for just one person, it works pretty doggone good. Yeah, Dave D. I have over 700 passwords. Yeah, same with me. Glenn, using 1Password, I have to remember less than 5 passwords. My 1Password is very complicated. My other passwords, I don't know what they are. I cannot go on your computer and go to my bank account because I don't know what my password is. Yes, but the other thing is you could access 1Password on someone else's computer by downloading 1Password and then unlocking, because I've got my 1Password stuff locked somewhere else.
Yeah.
On in the cloud.
Yeah. So what were you just saying?
So it means I could, in theory, use my 1Password on your computer or on the library computer or things like that. I don't, because I don't ever want to do that stuff on computers that I don't trust.
Right.
Glenn says, not a fan of 1Password, though. 1Password 7, like the old interface. Yeah, I haven't even updated to 1Password 7. I'm still on 1Password 6. I don't like the new one. It's one of those things that there's no need for me to change. Back in the good old days, I would update every single time. Now it's like, yeah, only if I have to. Because if it works and it's secure the way it is, I like the way it is now, and the new version doesn't offer me anything extra except a prettier user interface, don't care. I'm not gonna update it. So, Lauren, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate it very much.
You just
I don't know if
appreciate it because he confirms what you believe.
Well, yeah, but he's a tech guy, so. But Mo, you did become a meme in our house. You didn't tell Mo that, did you? I thought that was my funniest YML moment.
Mo is a meme.
Honey.
Oh, honey.
Mo was, honey. Oh, my God.
Dave Farron.
Oh, honey.
Dave Farron, and I believe Dave is in Ireland. He says on your recent show you mentioned visiting museums and historic buildings in Lisbon. You should consider getting the Lisbon card, which gets you free public transport, free access to most museums, art galleries, etc., discounts in restaurants and tours. It's available for 24, 48, or 72 hours. Very useful in public transit rather than fiddling for the correct coins. Handy, reduces hassle. Obviously, you need to make maximum use of it for the day or days. You have to make it economic. That's something I've got listed on my things that I'll tell people about, is that's something you can buy it at the airport. Lisbon cards, very much like you probably buy it at corner stores.
Well, it's like a Euro pass or something.
Exactly.
Right.
He said, you mentioned going to the Bel Tower and getting a hotel nearby. It's 15 years since I've been there, and things may have changed, but there's nothing to see inside. It's just a shell.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. For me, the picture is the outside of it.
Yeah.
There's some really beautiful views we've seen on the outside of it. And he's right. There's no hotels anywhere near the Bel Tower, so we're not going to be staying on that side of the river, that side of the bridge at all. It's going to be
I got a sense that the Bel Tower was just it's a monument, and there's not much more other than to take the picture and leave. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely be staying in the city side. He says, you mentioned going to Porto, although it's quite a distance away. Yeah, we're not going to Porto anymore. I did visit Coimbra, an hour and a half from Lisbon, which was the original capital of Portugal. One of the oldest universities in the world.
Oh.
But we're not going there. If we want to go to the oldest university, we'll go to Bologna.
Yeah. I love I love universities.
Then we should make a travel when we're in Florence. We should rent a car and go to Bologna, because the oldest university in the world is in Bologna. And we can have a sandwich.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it.
Oh, dear. Best of luck with your trip, David Farron. David has been there in the past. If anyone
Another
has
Dave.
another, I know this is weird.
So many Daves.
So many damn Daves. So yeah, if anyone else has any ideas, suggestions, questions about the Lisbon trip, or have you been to Lisbon? Is there a restaurant you think we should go to or avoid? Don't tell me about the pastel de natas. We're definitely eating our body weight in those. That's that delicious custard pastry stuff. We're definitely going to go to the world's oldest bookstore. That's going to be cool.
Yes, I agree.
Even if it's in Portuguese, I'm buying a book in the world's oldest bookstore.
I'm sure they have lots of interesting books.
It's going to be good. And as I mentioned before, the nice folks at Lonely Planet are going to be giving away guidebooks, not just to Lisbon, but to anywhere in the world, starting in September. So thanks very much to the nice folks at Lonely Planet for doing that.
That's right.
That's it for this show. I want to say thanks, as always, to our good friend Jim Dalrymple of The Loop at loopinsight.com for joining us on the show. Thanks to you guys for being tuned into the show. A huge, huge thank you. And this is a little bit disappointing, so I want to set this up by saying this is a huge thank you to Dave D. Dave is our first official attendee. He and his wife, Anna, are our first official attendees to our Lisbon trip, and it's going to be a fantastic trip. But that information was what made Melissa think this was actually going to happen. She didn't believe it was real until Dave D signed up. You didn't have faith until
not
Dave
true.
D signed up.
No.
You did not believe we were going to Lisbon until Dave D signed up.
No, I said there's one person. There needs to be one person, and then it's almost like it will gain momentum.
That's not what you said. You didn't believe we were going.
Well, maybe I didn't.
Aha! J'accuse!
Did you?
I did, but Dave D really helped it
Yes,
along.
Dave did, and Dave blushes.
Dave, you have certainly energized us into doing this, so I thank you very much for being one of the early bird folks. I know MacMan has said he's going to wait till closer to the early bird deadline.
Yes.
And I understand that, but I still don't like you.
Oh, I do, MacMan, very much.
By the way, MacMan, are you bringing a guest? Is it just you, or is there a Mrs. MacMan?
Yeah.
I forgot to ask him that. To be honest, I was waiting just in case nobody else signed up.
See, MacMan didn't have faith either.
I completely understand that.
We took that one person.
You know what? I understand that. That makes sense, and that's why I think that's why Dave D signing up really helps. Because now we know we've got someone who is going, and other people will go, oh, Dave D is doing it too?
Did it.
Maybe
Yeah.
MacMan will. Monty. Want to see Monty? Monty, you've got a big event that you can do in Lisbon that we've talked about that you should do. I'd love to see Glenn and Susan there. That'd be fantastic.
Yes.
I don't know whether to give them a discount, though. You think I should? They are my oldest and dearest friends.
Well, for that reason. But
How about we give Glenn and Susan a 2-for-1 discount?
that's your decision. not my decision.
MacMan says, no, there's no misses. Maybe there will be once you leave Lisbon.
I'm looking forward to meeting anybody and everybody who comes.
I know,
I'm
so am I.
very excited
It's
about
going to be
that.
a lot of fun regardless. Folks, that's Glenn. I'll take it.
I'll take it. He'll take it.
He'll take it. Folks, until next week, as always, thank you guys very much for listening. Don't forget to listen to our...
Dave's going to bring his bike shorts.
Oh, Jesus. I can almost guarantee you will not be bicycling around Lisbon.
No, it's too steep.
Lisbon is like Rome. It's built on 7 hills, and it's so steep. There are some of the streets have got steps built into them.
I think Dave's just going to bring them to wear.
Oh, no.
He can wear whatever the heck he likes.
No, he can't.
Yes, he can,
No.
Dave. Yes, you can.
No, there will be clothing restrictions.
Oh, get out of here.
There'll be no bike shorts allowed.
I don't care. You wear your bike shorts.
No.
I'll wear mine. I'll bring my bike shorts.
Oh, come on. Because you look good in bike shorts.
You put on this. Oh, we go. Anyway, just wear what.
Sexy Dave is sexy.
Dave
Glenn
is
says.
sexy.
Folks, thank you very much for listening. Don't forget our other podcast is Don't Listen to Us, also available on the iTunes. Until next week, I've been Shawn King.
I'm Melissa King.
And you've been listening to Your Mac Life. Thanks for joining us. See ya.
Bye. Oh, bye, Sherry.
Bye, Sherry.